Hey, welcome to the
first. Made it.
Yeah, you did. Welcome to the first layer. My name's Richard Cleveland. That's Brian Baker over there.
How's it going, guys? Happy Sunday.
Happy Mother's Day to all the mothers out there. I want to say that first and foremost.
Yes.
There's two mothers in my life that are not with us anymore, but today I spent some time remembering them. Andrew Hayes, hi from South Yorkshire, England. Hello, South Yorkshire, England. Glad you're here.
It must be evening time there.
Yeah, must be. Just wanted to quickly tell you about some stuff before we get into the questions today. We have new filament coming out from M3D, which is released as of today. They have ABS in red, blue, and purple, and they are all matte, so go and check them out at matter3d.com and pick up some. I think they're having a sale of ABS 3 rolls for $100 and change. I can't remember what it is.
Yeah, we'll have to look up the exact thing.
I'll have to look up the exact thing.
So yeah, you know, just for fun, today's episode is brought to you by the letter R, printed in Matter 3D that I can't seem to break. And I want to give a very special shout out to two very young new members that are watching us today, and that will be Jesse and Quinn. Good morning and happy Sunday to you all. Hopefully you're giving your mother a lot of loving love for Mother's Day.
Make her some lunch or some breakfast. Let her stay in bed. Get her a bottle of wine and leave the house.
That's probably a good plan. Yeah. Though it's snowing up here, so there's really not a lot of fun stuff to go and do today.
Yeah, it sucks because they've shut everything down.
To sneak out and steal your neighbor's flowers to give to your mother, because then they'll think the deer ate it.
Yeah, there you go. There you go. So Brian or Dean Hintz says thank you for the Marlin video, Brian.
Thanks, guys. Yeah, I really appreciate it. What I did with that video was I had to upgrade, so I figured, why don't I just candidly shoot the whole thing and walk you through the process? And that's why there's little mistakes and why I didn't edit them out, is because I want to show you it's okay to make mistakes. It's easy to recover from them. And as we saw, even with that, we got it all running in 30 minutes. The only feedback I got on this video, and this came from the actual Marlin Discord, was that a lot of people like to use Git itself to synchronize their changes. And personally, I haven't gone down that route, but this way was a bit more interactive so that you can read the code yourself rather than relying on algorithms to synchronize it all up. So especially if you're new to Marlin, this is a great learning exercise for you to learn each of the settings particular to your printer.
Yes, definitely. So if you haven't seen the video yet, I'm going to encourage you to go ahead and check that out. And also check out our video on the Voron build. We've got another one coming in another week, not this coming Saturday. We actually are going to be putting this new board from Aster, that one right there that has a Wi-Fi chip on it, into my Ender 3. So we're going to do that this week because we are due to get this done. And there's some ups, there's some downs. So we're going to do that this week. We've got a question here from World Planet Gadget. He says, I enjoy your videos. I even saw a video from a few years ago where you show how to paint a print. Thank you very much for conveying your knowledge. You are so very welcome. We're glad that you guys are getting stuff out of this because it's important for us to allow you guys to get the information that we've worked so hard to build up ourselves. And
I won't lie, my favorite thing is reading negative comments on like 3-year-old videos, and it's like, yeah, we've grown beyond that, guys.
Joseph Jolly wants to know what my recommendation for an airbrush is. In all honesty, I'm going to go with the Iwata Eclipse. That is by far my favorite double action airbrush.
Iwata are great, but they'll set you back quite a bit. So just be
aware.
Yeah,
they're about $120. They're a very good airbrush, though. I use mine constantly.
But if you're
I do
just
need a new
learning,
needle for mine. What's that, babe?
If you're just learning, you could maybe go to the Princess Auto and get one of those airbrushes.
Yep.
Like 10,
just don't expect,
$15, but that'll get you to practice and get better at what you're doing before you spend like $200 on an airbrush that you don't know how to use.
And we also heard you loud and clear. Somebody here is going to be seen a lot more often around here. So everyone wave hello to Arnold.
Hi, Arnold.
Poor Arnold. I promise I won't turn you into a crash test dummy.
Ricky B, I did get your email question from the Sunday Live. I am just going to pull it up here. And we are going to actually go through that, Ricky. Just so you know, I'm going to go through that probably tomorrow. Tuesday, I go get my shot for COVID, or my COVID needle, my first of 2. And I'll make time tomorrow to go through that email. I haven't had time this week. I've just been so busy with the Voron and with other projects that have been going on. And the weather has not cooperated with my migraine brain whatsoever. So
for those of you who don't know the Alberta area, it is very common to receive snow here up until and slightly after the May long weekend. And then after that, I kid you not, May long weekend is our metric for when to pull our winter tires off our vehicles, to give you an idea. Yep. So it's annoying snow. We're right around 32 Fahrenheit, 0 Celsius. So it's right on the fringes of rain and snow back and forth. It's not fun.
Okay, so we got from BD5 Ron. He says, the Z-axis display doesn't show layer height on my Ender 3 V2. I'm not sure that it's supposed to, but if it is, what I would do, BD, is I would go ahead and download the latest firmware for the V2, the Ender 3 V2, install it onto your machine, and that will tell you if it's supposed to be there or not. If they haven't got something like that turned on in their firmware, there's probably a reason for it. And the boards that they're making over there at Creality do not have a great amount of memory in them to hold different displays, so or different information for your display. So that's something to be very, very aware of. But I would try first and foremost downloading the latest firmware, installing that onto your machine, making sure that you're up to date first and foremost, and then going from there.
Yeah, the Ender 3 V2, remember too that the, I think it's a D-Win display, someone will correct me if I'm wrong, but that one is not driven by the motherboard itself. It's actually self-driven and communicates with the motherboard. So it will maintain its own separate firmware, and unfortunately, since I have no experience with the V2s, I can't tell you if that's a known bug where you had to upgrade the LCD firmware. But that being said, just like with Marlin, there's a lot of community builds for the firmwares for the screens that provide additional functionality that might be worth looking into. Those of you who are watching right now who do have an Ender 3 who's done that, let us know in the chat what you think. Have you tried a custom LCD firmware and what your experiences are? We personally like to stick to the ones that are driven by the main board, which is, the 128/64 variants.
We've got Mac CJ12345. He says, use the Ender 3 V2 extension UI by Jayers.
Oh, Yigers.
Geigers.
Yeah. So extended UI. Again, these companies will put the bare minimums normally into these firmwares, and then community will go and add these features in. So that's a great recommendation. Thank you for that. And actually, Ben Brady said the same thing. Get this Yayer's firmware. So again, I haven't tried it, but thank you for that verification. And hopefully if we get an Ender 3 V2 on our hands, we can give it a try ourselves.
Well, we had one and I gave it away.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it worked. That was the thing,
It
right?
worked, yeah.
A lot of the review printers, guys, that we get, if we have no use for them, we donate them to local initiatives. So,
Yeah.
Schools and things like that they're looking for, just to kind of get them into the 3D printing space. We do a bit of sales of units, but generally it's not review units because we don't want to imply we're accepting units to receive a profit from it.
There you go. I want to get to today's question that came in through email. This is vibration in 3D printers. Question from Roger Sakura. He says, I see people online suggest placing a cement patio block or a rubber pad under a printer to reduce vibration caused by the rapid change in the directions of the printhead. Of course, having a sturdy desk and a solid printer frame helps, but should I even worry about this or just adjust the acceleration and jerk settings in the Cura software? I'm always trying to improve my prints, but I'm just chasing a black cat in a dark room. And yes, you are just chasing a black cat in a dark room in this case. It all depends on what surface that printer is sitting on. The printer itself is pretty solid. At the end of the day, if your table is like a cheap IKEA lac table with some legs, then definitely I would put something on there to absorb the vibration. But if you've got it on a shelf or on a workbench that is very stable and sturdy, you don't have to worry about that. It's not going to do anything too crazy for you. Right?
Yeah, and just to add to that there, you got to remember vibration on a machine is a factor of two items. Number one, it's directional change and it's inertial change.
Yeah.
So with a bed slinger design, which is what most of our printers are defined as, the bed is the heaviest moving item. Usually X movement, you couldn't, even at 5,000 acceleration, you wouldn't get enough directional change vibration to physically move the machine, whereas the inertia of the bed is enough to shimmy it around. So there's a couple things, when they talk about the concrete brick, yes, it does work because it creates a very heavy, low center of gravity. Right. And so even though your machine tries to shift, it can't, if you got it gripped really good to that concrete, simply put the inertial properties of the concrete stone is going to far exceed what the bed can do. But the problem is then your bed slinger, if it is really ripping that hard, now all that inertial tension, instead of being transferred over to the frame, is going to be applied 100% to the belt that drives it, which can cause stretching. It can cause it to break down over time. So it's okay. But in actuality, what we refer to this as is patching it rather than fixing it. So in this case, simply put, your acceleration is too high. Now, if you get a chance, even if you haven't done a firmware upgrade before, check out this latest video because I talk about a feature in there called XY frequency limit. And what it is, it's new in Marlin, but it actually slows down the motion if it detects that your direction changes per second, which is referred to as a frequency or a hertz, is higher than a value. It actually slows it down so your printer doesn't vibrate as much. So when you turn that feature on, it results in a 10 hertz frequency limit, meaning that your directions can't change direction more than 10 times per second. Otherwise, it's going to slow it down to meet that threshold. So when you have a little line that goes like up and down, up and down, up and down like that, it's going to slow down on there, but your frame is no longer going to vibrate. So you can use that in addition with your acceleration and jerk settings to reduce that vibration factor. But at the end of the day, most bed slingers, even with 500 acceleration, shouldn't cause a lot of vibration unless your belts are loose or you're trying to move too fast. Always look at maybe slowing those down a little bit. I think, Richard, it's safe to say with most of our Creality machines at 500, we don't generally get any ringing on the X and Y direction changes with the acceleration of 500, as long as you're not trying to go like 80, 90 millimeters per second. So maybe just give it a good look over, especially with that belt tension, because that belt tension is generally the #1 reason people get vibration, because if it's a little bit loose, your bed can wiggle at the end of a movement.
Not only that, your X carriage will do the same thing. If it's coming, your X gantry is coming across with the extruder on it, and you see that belt sort of overslack the idler at the end, it's not tight enough. So it's something to watch. something to keep in mind. Jerry's got a question here from Mark L. Baker. He says, is polycarbonate more impact resistant than fiberglass? And can you 3D print polycarbonate? Thanks. I'm not sure about the impact resistance because I haven't tested it, but yes, you can print polycarbonate. It is a higher temperature plastic. You do, I believe, need a enclosure to print with it. And I think you've got to get your nozzle temp way up there. And don't use a brass nozzle with it. You're going to want to use a hardened steel or a nozzle X or a titanium, whatever nozzle that you can get that is in that realm. I would suggest that.
And it's not a cheap filament either, PCL.
No.
Right now I'm seeing just quickly on view about 750 grams can go for over $100 US. So, but actually, hang on. So maybe I got wrong because PCL is glue stick, isn't it?
No, polycarbonate. Polycarbonate is not PCL.
Yeah, that's why. Yeah, I'm having one of those Sundays, guys. You know, there's so many materials now. Oh, what are these new ones we're hearing about? Like the well, there was MLA, and then there was BLA, and everyone's coming out with their own.
There's all kinds of different ones. We've got a question from Accord XTC right now.
Mm-hmm.
He says, I upgraded to the yellow springs and wondered how much of a difference upgrading to the silicone ones make. Is it worth it? Now, Brian, you've done a silicone upgrade on one of your printers.
Yeah,
right?
I've actually made my own silicone spacers, and there's not much to it really. There's actually some molds you can 3D print and put it in. At the end of the day, I do think they're worth it, with the caveat that you understand what they're doing. So the silicone, basically, because of its rubber-like compound, it's still quite firm. And I unfortunately, I don't have any pieces of that silicone mold still floating around beside me there, but it is running on my CR-10 back here. They're worth it in the mind that if your bed leveling truly doesn't really vary much, that you're actually going to get a stronger compression ratio against that nut.
Mm-hmm.
But that being said, the one thing I haven't looked into is if you were to go and put, you put your silicone on there and you're ready to work with it. Richard, maybe what is the working time of Loctite these days? Because I think that the best combination would be silicone spacers with Loctite glue, assuming you have the
as far as the working time goes, I think you've got quite a bit of working time with Loctite. You don't want to use the heavy. You want to use the medium or the light. And
yeah, use blue. And to give you guys an idea of tensile strength of blue, if you've ever taken apart a laptop and you see that little bit of blue on the threading, that's a Loctite blue variant. It's meant to prevent small vibrations, but you can still hand torque it, unlock it yourself. Because micro vibrations is what causes it to loosen, not big hammering usually.
And our next question is from... you hit the wrong button. Joseph Burton is asking, classic CR-10, linear rails, yes or no? I heard many no's based on general design of the printer not being worthy of quality rails as they simplify imperfections on the print. Or they amplify, pardon me.
I wouldn't say they amplify imperfections, but I would say definitely the quality of linear rails can vary quite a bit manufacturer to manufacturer. I did a video, my gosh, was it about 2.5 years ago I did on my CR-10 where I converted here, and I'm still running those rails on there. But that being said, what I would look at is the cost of investment, right? For anything that's like a 300 or smaller, those rubber wheels will do perfectly fine. And in fact, if you wanted the linear rail precision, you're probably going to get that just by switching out to polycarbonate wheels. But polycarbonate wheels, since they have no compression factor on it, you have to be really careful on how you adjust and tighten it in, and it could make your print a lot worse. Don't go looking for problems on your printer. That's generally my opinion on this matter. I did the linear rails because I wanted to learn more about linear rails. So I dropped maybe 70 or 80 bucks on my 2 rails for this darn machine, and the print quality hasn't varied in any significant fashion. And if you don't know how to take care of rails, they can get noisy. Mine are squeaking behind me right now, and I'm just kind of letting it go. Honestly, I've got more bearings on order, so I don't care. But they do require more maintenance than the wheels.
They do.
Just look at your print, and again, look at the flaws and determine what causes those flaws. And like we've been talking about today, usually it's acceleration and jerk. That's all you need to adjust.
Now, when it comes to adding linear rails, as you guys know, we're building a Voron here right now, which is 300, and it is all linear rail. Absolutely all of it's linear rails. So therein lies, yes, I can get faster speed. However, you're sacrificing one for the other. If I want fast speeds, of that 200 or 120 millimeters per second, I'm going to sacrifice some quality. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. There is, yes, they're nice and smooth. However, it's still moving around a hot end and extruder assembly that weighs about a pound. At the end of the day, when you add in that stepper motor and so on and so forth, I think it just comes in under a pound. And at the end of the day, yes, you're going to get smoother movement. No, you may not get improvement. I've always said from the beginning, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. Yeah. Yes, there's tuning that has to be done on every printer. It doesn't matter if you've bought 6 CR-10. You're going to have to tune each one individually. And they may widely vary in their tuning from 1 to 6, and we go through that all the time. Like, we've got a whole bunch of Mingda printers that we've purchased and that they're Amazon returns, of course. We've purchased them. We are fixing them. We're fixing all of the issues with them. We are updating all of the firmware. We're changing out some parts to a little bit better parts, but nothing you couldn't buy online. And at the end of the day, every one of the printers I've done so far has varied wildly in the differences in the way that they print. So look at your prints. If it's a layer issue, you've got some work to do. If you're over extruding, you've got some work to do. None of anything else, no linear rails, no Core XY, no nothing is going to improve that print unless you take care of the tuning first. Okay?
Yeah, absolutely. And just on a side note, since we've been talking a lot about linear rails, I just want to give a shout out to Robot Dig, man. They have really caught me off guard for how good their manufacturing process is. And I want to show you guys something real quick here. I placed an order the other day, and they sent me this photo before they shipped it out. So they actually show you everything being packaged and organized for your order, and then they send you a photo of it boxed up before it even ships out, so that you know that they have, assembled your order properly and it's organized and all that. And these are the guys we're using for our linear rails as per the recommendations from Voron Design. We don't do any affiliate codes or anything for them, but I mean, these are all these anodized black rails. Richard can attest, he's received his and played with them a bit, and they've been really
They're
nice
all on the machine now.
Yeah. So you'll be seeing that video coming up fairly soon here.
Yeah,
but
in another few weeks. Anyway,
the quality kind of really shows, and that's why I wanted to shout out to those guys. Even though it's coming from China, they do ship from FedEx. They actually do a courier, so it comes fairly quickly. It really does help to take those vendor recommendations from Amazon, from Voron Design, because
you want about Filament.
Yeah, you want to bring that one back up there? I'm sorry, I'm just going to say about.
There we go. That's the one. Shaka Ripper. Is that like a Jacka the Ripper? Where can I buy filament to support the 3D community and not Amazon? Is it worth the money to pay for more expensive filament? Yes and no. This is a two-sided question. Depending on the manufacturer, I recommend first and foremost, if you want good filament here in Canada, you support Canadian. And there you go. Brian's got one right there. That's the gray from Matter 3D. They are out of Victoria.
I can't break this stuff. I'm trying. Seriously. And this was 2 perimeters, okay? Here's the thing. This may cost around $30 a kilogram, but you can cut down your material cost by reducing your infill by having a stronger material, and that's where your savings come in.
Yes, absolutely. Now, that also being said, there are other brands I highly recommend. 3D Fuel. If you're in the States, I also recommend Protopasta. I do also recommend Arion. filament, which you can buy on Amazon.
Take a look at our Amazon store, and you can support us that way.
If you want to support the channel, you can go to our Amazon store, which is the first layer, and we can get you a link for that. And
not to be confused with the companies selling parts on Amazon, okay, guys?
Right.
We are not that first layer, and we're actually looking to see what we can do about that, because
let me see if I can pull up our page on Amazon.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just going to go to shop. Chapo. You keep talking, Brian.
I'm trying to eat sushi here now. Or what we call Caucasian sushi. It's just the cucumber rolls. Yeah, you know, I used to buy... I'm honestly a person that buys a lot of cheap filament, okay? Anywhere from $12 to $15 to $20. I've done it kind of all. And what I've found is every time I buy a cheap filament, it might work for a bit, and then there's issues with my machine that I start to think I've screwed up something on my machine. So then I continue to use that roll to try and calibrate and sort out the issues, and then I'm throwing away that roll because it's all junk, and then I grab another roll, and then finally I'm like, you know what, maybe I should go grab one of my good rolls and just put it through, and everything comes out fine. So it's really hard to determine if it's your machine or it's your filament. And, you know, these days, especially, we've spoken a lot with Matter 3D lately just to kind of, you know, tell them what you guys want for filament and stuff. But I've also been trying to compare against some of the competition. And what shocked me the most is going through Amazon right now, the price of, like, AMZ and all the other brands is way higher than it used to be. You know, we're talking they're $27 to $32 a kilogram. So if you're going to spend that much money, why not buy the good brand for $30 a kilogram, right? You know, there are some group buys out there, like Hello 3D. I've had some good luck with it before, to be honest with you. But, you know, everybody's selling Hello 3D these days. And, you know, I know what the markup is on that stuff, because you know what you can buy it wholesale for.
Yeah.
And then you look at the price of what they're trying to sell locally. And yeah, buy local is always a good thing here. But, you know, you're basically just paying a premium for someone to act as an importer for you, which I don't generally agree with. That's why we went with Matter 3D, is because they're the first Canadian company to actually be mass producing their filament 100% in-house. The materials are coming guaranteed from NatureWorks in the US, and it's a higher quality PLA. It's not the 4043D pellets. It's a better quality. I think it's an Ingeo one there. But as I'm showing you here, and unfortunately I didn't bring up the W here, my other letter of the day, but you know, that was printed out of a PET-G from another Canadian supplier, and that stuff was flexible. I could almost rip it in half, and it was printed with almost the exact same settings as this PLA. And this stuff here, like, I'm actually going to be using this on a sign, but you can see there's almost no flex on it whatsoever. There's no cracking sounds as I'm pulling this, and this is 15% infill with 2 perimeters. So at the end of the day, unless you are like mass producing something that you're trying to maximize your margin as much as possible, just spend the extra money and get a couple of good quality rolls and take your time. You know, we've explained this before. You're not going to waste filament if you print a temp tower. You're not going to waste filament if you print a calibration cube or any of the overhang tests.
Right.
You're going to maybe use 20 grams of filament out of that 1 kilo roll. And then guess what? You can save your results. You know what your temperatures are. And with a $1 Sharpie from the dollar store, you can write that result on that individual reel. So if you swap it out, you know what settings work best with that reel.
I am.
Now, yeah.
So,
One final thing, in our experience so far, Matter 3D, we haven't had to change our settings reel to reel. And that comes to the consistency of their production. And that's why we push them so much, is because at the end of the day, you're going to save more than $5 a reel in time just by having it work out of the box.
So I'm trying to get to the Amazon shop the first layer, and for whatever reason, I cannot find it. It won't let me in.
No money for us.
No money for us. That's right.
With 3D, thanks for that testimony. They're saying it's very consistent and reliable. Admittedly, the roll of Prushment you gifted me there, I haven't had a chance to even run it yet because I've been busy running my machine nonstop with the Matter 3D, but I can't wait to do my comparison between the two. As I told you guys earlier, it's snowing here, so we haven't been able to do a UV test with Matter 3D yet, where we put it out in the sun and see how it deforms compared to standard PLA. But so far, I really have no complaints about this filament. I'm really impressed.
For whatever reason, I cannot find our store on Amazon right now.
Maybe we got taken down for copyright infringing on the guys who are stealing from us.
Well, you never know.
We will look into that, guys. Thank you.
Yes, we will look into that. But in any case, where we're at now is you can support us on Amazon. All you have to do is look for the first layer. So Tim is saying, so far I find Matter 3D filament to be very consistent and reliable. Best I've used since Prushiment. I will agree with that. I think they are consistent. They are doing a much better job than they were with the initial rolls we got. But it is coming together, and now with more colors coming down the line, you guys have a wider variety of materials to choose from. Now, I've got some eSun upstairs I'm going to be making parts for future Vorons with. With the new stuff that's coming in, the purple, the red, and the blue, we're going to make more Voron parts with. And we're just, we'll have Voron parts available, printed parts available for those of you that can't print them off because you don't have an enclosure or you can't print ABS for whatever reason. So bear in mind when you guys are ready, come see us. Go to shopthefirstlayer.com to get those. That's
also, here's a photo we received the other day. This is the matte purple first layer color coming. So it's obviously taking away the cell phone, so don't judge it based off the vibrance there, but is so matte. And you know, I've worked a bit with their matte black ABS, and oh my goodness, does it come out. You couldn't even tell it was a 3D print. With Prusa ironing, it actually looks like an injection molded part. So yeah, we can't wait to give this a try. Hopefully we'll get this in the next couple of weeks here.
Yeah, I'd love to give that a try because it'll look amazing. What else we got there, Jerry? Why are you sorry? What are you doing?
I keep on trying to stuff my face with sushi, so...
Okay, wow. You need to tell Matter 3D to update their website. I see they posted on Facebook and they have red ABS, but I cannot order it from their site.
Okay,
it's
let
not
me just
on their
check
site
there and
yet.
see if it's listed yet there, because I know the red and blue PLA were there, but let me just take a boot here, guys. Just bear with me one moment. And then
That's for cats. What do I think of Hatchbox? I think it's a entry-level material. I don't think it stands up to the same quality as Matter 3D or Protopasta or 3D Fuel. I think that it's great for somebody just starting out and not knowing what to buy. Hatchbox is great because it's a fairly inexpensive material. But overall, at the end of the day, I don't like the long-term use of it. It does absorb moisture very quickly. For whatever reason, and it swells, and then you run into clogging issues. So that's something to keep aware.
Yeah, what you guys need to look into is, you know, Amazon is what I call my convenience store, okay?
Yep.
When I need something really fast, I will pay the convenience fee. And the fact is with Amazon Prime, it is certainly much more convenient even than going to your local brick and mortar store sometimes too.
Correct.
Now that being said, when I got started out with 3D printing, my choice was buy locally for about $30 a kilo or buy the Hatchbox on Amazon for, it was between $20 and $22. So I actually went that route, and back then I really liked a couple different brands. I think Solutech Silver was a wonderful product. I always enjoyed running on my machines. But that was back then when there was a noticeable price difference and also a convenience factor that I wasn't driving at the time. So to get over to the physical stores was much more cost prohibitive than even ordering from Amazon. Now, as I mentioned earlier, these prices of PLA on the market, and whether honest to goodness, I believe it's a result of high shipping rates internationally right now, where international suppliers are having a hard time getting their product to Amazon for a cheap shipping rate, and so that's being reflected in the prices. If there's anything about the Backstreet Boys reunion tour I've learned here is that it is possible to source stuff domestically now for actually far cheaper than ordering it internationally. And a good example was the screws for our Voron build. So Richard
Yes.
received his from McMaster Car, and I did price it out, and I found that was a bit too expensive for me. I contacted a couple different suppliers through Alibaba, which for those of you who don't know is the business-to-business level of AliExpress, where you can place much more large bulk orders with the vendor. And their shipping costs for a lot of screws came in about $110 US on top of the $170 US quote that I got for the bolts. So I went to a local supplier that's down the street from my office. We're not talking like a big brick and mortar company. We're talking a small industrial supplier who has connections within Canada. And I gave them the BOM of my Voron build, and then I said multiply it by 3 or 4, bring it up to 1,000 if the quantity is cheaper and so forth. And at the end of the day, I think I got close to 3,000 or 4,000 bolts of various M345s in the 12.9 shore hardness, black anodized style. And the total price for me, shipping and all, was $230 Canadian, which comes in at about 160, 170 US, okay? Guys, please buy local during these times. Try and work with your local suppliers. Now that you are getting into a bit beyond the hobbyist space, it's a great time to connect with your local hardware stores and distributors and find out what the prices are. Obviously, I'm not going over to Canadian Tire here locally and paying 25 cents a bolt. I'm paying far less than that because I need a larger quantity. But do try and support local during these times, and we can get our economy rebooted and do all that stuff. But you're going to find you're actually probably going to save money these days buying locally versus importing, and that's a great thing, to be honest. Ben saying 3 Solutech has changed. What a shame, Again, it used to be a great product. That's why I can't vouch for it now, because I haven't used it in a while.
There you go. Okay, just launched. Why are the associates such a bad shape? I don't know. So from the Mega whatever, he says, hello, I have a question regarding BTT Smart Sensor. I just attempted to install it into the Ender 3 V2 with the 422 board using Ayer's Marlin. Unfortunately, when I run out sensor, it always shows.
Yeah, it shows run. It carries on. It always showing run out when print starts. So, take a look at our video that I cover the Big Tree Smart Filament Sensor. What you have to do. Unfortunately, I don't have Marlin up this moment, guys, but there is a setting underneath the filament runout sensor to define that it's a pulse-based runout sensor instead of a discrete one. And then there's a distance you have to define, which I believe defaults to 7 millimeters. It's not very much, but you can always bump that up from the LCD or actually, I guess with an Ender 3 V2, it might not be exposed on the screen. So you want to set it in the firmware, but basically, the reason it's running out immediately is because it's treating the input as a regular filament runout switch. So since there's a pulsing pattern, and you'll see that on my video, the moment it drops low, if the Marlin firmware is not configured to know that it's a pulsing sensor, it's going to think that it ran out of filament right at that moment. It's going to park it. It's going to go and change out your filament, go back and resume its point. And then before it even has a chance to move, it's going to say, oh, my signal's low. I ran out of filament again, and it keeps bouncing back. And most of the time, what you end up having to do is actually turn off the runout sensor just to continue your print. Just please look into that setting. It's about partway through my video there, just about how to configure that pulsing pattern. And with that, the Mega whatever, welcome to the infill level.
Yes, welcome to the infill level. Well, I don't know where our store went, but it was there.
Yeah. Now, guys, I just did speak with Matter 3D, and those filament colors are coming up today. So thank you for your patience there. We always tend to get the exciting news and then find out it might take a couple hours to implement. They're still a small operation, but, again, I give them a lot of leniency because this is some darn good stuff.
Very good stuff. And I can't wait to see what else they come up with, to be perfectly honest.
Yeah, I'll be honest. I never shopped a lot of ABS because it never was really something I kind of went to by default. And mostly because I only ever saw it in black and white. And I won't lie to you guys, seeing these colors in ABS is really exciting. And Something else funny I learned the other week, too, was for those who don't know, MG Chemicals is no longer manufacturing 3D filament. And they were kind of the other chemical company that we would go to sometimes for ABS because it was definitely a different grade. Notably, they're transparent. Now, until Matter 3D came out with their transparent PLA, the next closest thing for me was MG Chemicals. And so actually, when I was at one of my electronics suppliers the other day who did sell MG Chemicals at the time, they informed me they were selling out. I was able to get one deep discounted. So I'm going to be doing a video coming up comparing Matter 3D's transparent PLA to MG Chemicals transparent PLA, just to show you guys the differences between the two for two companies that are very focused on their chemical composition rather than, just like pretty colors and stuff at the time. But hey, with Matter 3D, we got both. We got pretty colors and chemical. So we'll see.
Okay. I found it.
Yay.
Found it. Okay. Dun, 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 dun.
Our Amazon store, guys, just so you know.
I'm putting it in the chat right now.
Yeah, we don't sell anything on Amazon, okay? I'll make that very clear. We don't sell anything, but we have the ability to set up a recommended product page.
Yes.
Where we can link you to those products, and there will be no cost increase to you or anything. There's just kind of an affiliate kickback if you decide to purchase through our link. So if there is something, the best things you can do to help us is if there's something you buy regularly through Amazon, if you don't mind sending us a link to that product, we can add it to our page. Yep. And then if you click on that, you're paying the same price, but Amazon is giving a little bit of that money over to us to support the channel, and it does definitely help.
So right now in our store, for those of you that are interested, we have Kodak filament in there. We have Arion filament in there.
Mm-hmm.
And we have Form Futura is also in there. Kodak, that's all Kodak. There's a lot of Kodak in here.
Joseph Jolly is saying that M3 does not ship to Florida. Let me look into that because everything's supposed to ship across the entire USA there. So, actually, maybe Joseph, I don't know if you have me on Facebook. If you don't mind sending me a zip code just so we can try and verify that, work that out with Matter 3D. But I'll send them a message right now and just mention that there might be some checkout issues with Florida.
If you go to our store on the first layer, our storefront, or the first layer on Amazon, it's Amazon.ca. I put that into our chat down there. So please copy that, put that into your favorites, and then we'll be able to see a little bit of a kickback. Has anyone tried out the new UBL Mesh Wizard yet? I have not, Vert Hobby. Brian, have you?
No, I still prefer bilinear, honestly, because my beds, I know what the curvatures are.
Mm-hmm.
UBL, I just haven't ever had a chance to read into it, and early on it kind of turned me off because it was fighting a lot with my probe offset. But that being said, I'm sure it's better now. Well, we're going to go through a video eventually here covering the different bed leveling software options in there. But bilinear has been tried and true with me. Some of my big beds, I do 36 points of checks. Other ones, I only do 9 or 16. And that's been completely acceptable for me.
Ben, you say that there's no first layer store in Amazon in the U.S. That's because the Canadian store, because we're in Canada, we have to set up in Canada. But it is available for everyone internationally. It should ship internationally. It'll take you to the .com once you're there, so you can do it that way, and we still get a little kickback. The real Sam Prentice, $4. Thank you very much for the super chat.
That's more than $4. That's 4 English pounds. Thank you, sir. That's like almost 2 Canadian coffees. Thank you so much. Appreciate it, my friend.
And I don't have any Canadian coffee right now to go on top of my lovely toast.
What a company, Look at this. So they've got these beautiful mugs in there, but they make sure you stare at the name Tim Hortons as you're drinking it, just so you know.
All right, Film Factory, he says, just used WinMerge to compare my old Ender 3 config.h with the new BL Touch Ender 3. Great software recommendation. Thank you very much. Brian did a lot of work on that. It was a couple weeks in the making, and we are going to continue down that trend throughout the year. We're going to be giving you something that's a little bit more advanced, but is easy to get through, especially it doesn't matter what level you're at. The way that we try to explain things, and if we're not explaining them as easy as you think we should be, let us know. But we do try and I'll go ahead and give you the best information that we can. Now, I saw something here from Sam Prentice. Oh, that's what I wanted to say about Sam. Hey, if you guys have not yet followed Sam on the on YouTube, go ahead and find Sam Prentice. He is building robots, 3D printing and building robots. Hey, Snapshot FPV, thank you very much for the $5.
Super chat.
Thank you.
There we go.
Super chat. Oh, yeah.
Now the super chats are starting to roll in. We like
Really
the super
appreciate
chats.
it. Yeah.
They always help.
This is definitely Keurig coffee this morning. Let's put it that way.
Tokyo Joe, are anti-backlash nuts worth it to install? Well, it depends on the printer.
Yeah.
If you have a printer that's using a single lead screw in the center to move your bed up and down, much like the Wanhao D6, I believe, does that. It has a single lead screw that moves up and down. And moves,
the D6 does. Ender 5 does, for instance.
Ender 5. You might be better off with an anti-backlash, and most of those already have anti-backlash installed. But if you're using something like an Ender 3 or a CR-10, I'm not so sure that it really makes a difference. Now, one of the things that I've done recently, and I saw this on a video, and I can't remember whose video I saw it on, but he was straightening out the rods, and what he did was he took the coupler, and I don't have a coupler on my desk, but he took the coupler, put it onto the motor, of course, and then once it was on there, he brought it up just a little bit so that it didn't come to the top of where it should, so that he could drop a ball bearing down there, a very small ball bearing. And then he puts the lead screw in and tightens it all up. And one of the nice things about that is that then your lead screw rides on that ball. You see, it moves on that ball. So you reduce a lot of your Z wobble by doing that. Now, anti-backlash nuts aren't going to help that. The anti-backlash nuts are if you're getting a lot of whip. And they help to keep things straight, but at the end of the day, do they work for everything? No. If you've got a multiple setup with 2 Z motors, I personally don't think you need them. Brian?
Yeah, at the end of the day, I mean, the fact is what we're dealing with is machine tolerances, right? So if you have, first of all, bear in mind, most of the nuts that are on Creality machines are made of brass, and the reason they are made of brass is because that's the softer metal than your actual Z rod. And if it was, for lack of a better term, dry grinding the rod up and down over time, you will wear down on the actual tolerance of that nut, and that can cause wiggle back and forth, as well as if your rod's crooked and various other factors. So believe it or not, one of the best things you can do is actually make sure to put a bit of lubricant on that rod just so that there isn't binding on there. But at the end of the day, what I found is most of the time, people get better print quality from the anti-backlash nut just because they're getting rid of the original one. If you replace the original one with the same one that's brand new and lubricated properly, you'd probably get the same results. At the end of the day, if you really want the utmost accuracy on that Z rod, you're better to go to a ball-based rod where the bearing actually sits in there and rides up. But again, that's a much higher investment, requires much more calculations. And at the end of the day, the best thing you can do is just make sure you're not ripping your Z speed way too fast. Lubricate and slow that thing down, and chances are those parts will outlive your machine, if you will.
Exactly.
But yeah, it's the anti-backlash. Really, for those of you who don't know what it does, it basically spring loads your gantry to give it a little bit of upper torsion to force it against the next tooth, so that there's no up and down wiggle. But again, that's patching a problem. The real problem is that your rod or your nut is inaccurate. And that's where we look into the things like this. I can safely say almost all my machines are not running anti-backlash, and they're running perfectly fine.
None of mine are. The Zenica or Sanska, he says 7 mil ball bearings, but you have to use flexible couplers as well. You're absolutely right. You do have to use flexible couplers. I did this recently on a client's Mingda D3, and I got to tell you, man, it looks amazing. It's night and day for the look that it gave the prints from when I started to where I finished. And if I had to do it on another one, I certainly wouldn't hesitate. I would go ahead and do it.
Yeah, it's just a matter of, don't spend money unless you have to, guys. I mean, I won't lie to you even. I purchased some special T-nuts from Alibaba or AliExpress a while ago, and instead of being brass, they were some kind of plastic. I can't remember what they were, but because of the type of plastic, they kind of were naturally lubricated. It was kind of like PFTE, and I found those were so tight and accurate compared to the brass ones, and they were meant for the Creality machine. I'll see if I can find it here in my order history. They weren't cheap by Alibaba standards. I think they were like $3 each or something silly. Here we go. Let me pull this up for you guys.
Tokyo Joe says you're making him want to order sushi.
Yeah. So here you go. Here, this one that I ordered here.
Are those the Delrins?
I'm sorry.
Are those the Delrins?
No. These are just from some company called Digital Tech, and maybe it's just on AliExpress. For those of you guys who don't know, many of these companies sometimes aren't even the manufacturer; they're just a reseller. But these were the exact ones I ordered last time, and you can see they're actually they're molded. They're really tightly detailed. They're pre-threaded. I think it says down here, palm nuts. What are they made out of here? Plastic, black, lightweight.
Yeah, those will be the Delrin ones. Those are Delrin.
And these were great. You can see, obviously, there's a little bit of burring and stuff like that. It's cheaper quality manufactured sometimes. But these things here are a drop-in replacement on the Crealities, and they did wonders for the machines that I played with. And yes, they were indeed very firm. I couldn't find, I didn't try to take a deburring tool or anything to see if I could strip it off or anything like that. But the tolerances were dead on, and they worked great as a replacement for the Creality. I'm hoping to see a lot more of these on the market. It's just a shame that, you have to pay about, $10 Canadian at the end of the day just for 4. So it is hard to stock up on the mass. They're not as cheap as the brass ones. But if you are looking at going down this route, I would start with this, because these ones, don't go and buy the round ones for your Creality machines. They actually don't fit the Creality. And, that's not really broadcast very well. You want to look for the ones that match this shape, where it's kind of like truncated off. We did try dremeling off the edges of the other round ones, and they still didn't work properly with the Crealities. So just go with something made for it. But these will be a drop-in replacement for you, and I'd love to hear your experiences with these.
So just before we move forward, we got a super chat from Ian Jones, 20 euros.
Wow, thank you.
And a question from the Louis Eric. He says, Voron 2.4, I'm building one as well. Did you go with Misumi or LDO extrusions? Is Misumi worth the premium? Yes.
100%.
100% it's worth the premium.
I unfortunately don't have any spare extrusion here right now. It's all over in my shop, but
I do.
What I want to explain to you guys is, when you buy the Misumi, that part number actually indicates the exact length, and Richard measured out each single piece of his, and it was dead on the nose. Oh, perfect. Okay, you got one there. Perfect. Yeah. So, one thing to focus on is they order T-slot aluminum, not to be confused with V-slot, which is what we have on most of our machines, because V-slot accompanies the wheel. Now, Richard, I don't know if you can angle it to get a light down the channel there, but this is the other big thing I wanted to show you guys, is the Misumi comes lined with a very narrow line down the channel. We'll see if we can angle it properly, yeah. And that line in particular gives you a lineup point to drill through so that all of your holes are straight in the center of the channel. Most other extrusion I've seen does not come with that, and it's not as easy as you think to center a drill hole in one of those holes. And the more centered it is, the more rigid and square your frame is going to be. Now, there is something else that we are experimenting with on this build. I'll see if I got a few pieces nearby here. But if you guys have seen the turbo videos about how fast you can print a benchy, one person mentioned buying carbon fiber tubes for the X and Y. So I did import a bunch of these carbon fiber tubes. They're actually really cheap through Alibaba, and we're going to go and actually drill some linear rails into these. But this is lightweight. This is probably about a fifth the weight of that 2020 extrusion. So we're going to try and play with some of this stuff. I wouldn't recommend jumping to this path right away, but because we had the spare extrusion, we're like, okay, let's experiment with a few concepts here. But this might be the future of X and Y gantries. So stay tuned, and we're going to play around more with this and see what the rigidity is like.
All right, so we've got another one here from Film Factory. He says, I love Cura, but recently I find the same STL, same PLA Prusa slicer gives me a much better print. I'd like to understand why.
Wow, that's a heavy question.
Yeah. I've played with Prusa slicer a little bit. Brian's played with a lot more than I have.
Mm-hmm.
You can get better prints using Prusa slicer in some cases. In other cases, you can't. So it's kind of a hit and miss when you're going that route. But at the end of the day, if you're getting better prints using the Prusa slicer, because of the way that it does the calculation and the math and breaks everything up in its own G code, you'll notice there's differences. If you do the same model in both and look at the G code in Notepad++ or another text editor like that, look at them side by side, you will notice some very big differences as you scroll through.
So basically, to summarize how a slicer program works, if you've ever seen a video, like a medical show or anything where they do the brain MRIs and you kind of see the staging of each image through each slice of the body, that's basically what a slicer program is doing. Is it's taking a 3D model and it cuts it into little chunks, and then it looks at it as a 2D drawing and says, okay, here's the layout of this layer. And then it goes and converts that into linear movements. Now, each program, like Prusa Slicer, which is based on Slick 3R or Slicer, however you want to pronounce it, Cura is an in-house one, IceSL is a different one, Idea Maker is a different one. They all have a different way of doing that pattern internally. However, generally, those results between all the systems will remain the same. What it is it comes down to the default settings within the slicer version to version. You know, there are certain things with Prusa Slicer that adapt your line width a little bit wider based off nozzle experience, whereas Cura does not. And what you'll find at the end of the day is if you were to go through every setting in Prusa and match it up with the equivalent setting in Cura, you're going to get two very, very similar prints coming out.
Yep.
So it's not so much the slicer as it is the default configuration. Now, in my experience, the Prusa Slicer default configurations seem to work far better than the Cura default ones. That being said, when you start dialing in Cura for your machine, you will get comparable results. And one thing that's really hurt me about Prusa Slicer is I've never been able to get the supports where I want to with them. And Cura having tree supports is a huge benefit to sticking with Cura. And honestly, with 4.9 Cura out now, and with Prusa Slicer having, and even Slick 3R having no indication that they're going after tree supports, I might slowly be migrating back to Cura again, just because the tree supports, the value of tree supports far outweighs many of the optimizations in Prusa Slicer. The only thing I can say about Prusa Slicer is it definitely chops the file faster. But I found with the really big stuff, anyways, most of the delay is on the tree slicing algorithm, and that can sometimes take 3-4 hours for some really big models.
Yeah, absolutely.
But try each of them. You know, at the end of the day, the best thing you can do with each slicer is take your default config, throw in a calibration cube, and we've talked about the Voron cube being our new kind of go-to for calibration. Put that on your bed, give it an hour, pull it off the bed, take a Sharpie, say this was done with Prusa. Then do the same thing with Cura, then do the same thing with Idea Maker, and look at all three. And based off that, as long as your temperatures are the same, you shouldn't be noticing any major differences between them. So Richard's got that cube right there that he was just showing. And that cube, we like that one because it's got a lot more different depths and channels, and you can orient it to sit on the cornered edge if you want to test your overhangs and all that. it's a great little cube. Unfortunately, I don't think I've seen it on Thingiverse. I've only seen it kind of in the STL package for the Voron, but you can download it there for sure.
Yeah, hit that like button, guys. Gary's got it right, 3D printing and painting. Okay.
Yeah. Thanks so much. Sorry, we're just sipping away at our coffee here. It's it never lit up out here today, so it's very dark and overcast. I keep looking out my window here.
It's kind of dark down here
like
too.
25 degrees with the window wide open right now, so I'm a little warm.
So this one's from Griffin. He says, "Hi, I was looking at buying an Ender 3, and I was wondering if I should get the Ender 3 Pro or the V2. Cost is not a main factor. I was just wondering if the V2 would be better." Now, the V2. In all honesty, has some advantage. It's got a new interface. It's got a new screen. It's got a 32-bit board. It's got, it's just got some extras that make it a better printer overall. Do I like the Pro? I love the Pro, but I never thought that when they went from the Ender 3 to the Ender 3 Pro, that it really was much of an upgrade to make it a Pro. Because
the Pro definitely was because of that 40/40 extrusion that housed the bed. It did help with some stability. I'll give them that.
I'll agree with you on that one. But overall, everything was pretty much cosmetic. They went from a regular PSU to a Meanwell PSU.
Yes,
that was one of the upgrades that they did.
In fact, that was kind of the big one that we focused on back then, because it was only $30 extra to get a $60 power supply. It was kind of a no-brainer.
Yeah. So it does have some advantages. I'm still not a big fan of the magnetic plates. The flex plate systems leave a lot to be desired. I would just take that flex plate, pitch it into the garbage, and get yourself a metal flex plate, or get yourself piece of glass to go on there. That will definitely help you as well.
For those of you who are looking at buying an Ender 3, don't pay extra for like the Ender 3X or whatever that comes with the glass plate versus the flex plate. Just spend that extra money and buy yourself a spring steel sheet, like an energetic one, or who are some of the other companies we've seen have had a bunch of them. Like a lot of the filament manufacturing and printer companies like BQ, Big Tree. They're all making spring steel sheets now available on Amazon for far less than they were 6 months ago. So just don't be buying for all the tinkers. Now the 3 Pro to the V2 is a fairly decent upgrade, notably for that 32-bit board, because when you start printing much more complex models, at the end of the day, the big difference between 32-bit and 8-bit is the number of commands it can process in a second because of its clock rate. Not so much the difference between the 8-bit bus versus 32-bit bus. We're not going to bore you with that. But the fact is, the faster the chip is, the more commands it can process. And when you are doing things, especially if you have like a 0.2 mil nozzle or something, you're trying to do very precise, small movements. Even with a 32-bit board, I've found ways to slow down the printer and halt it if you're doing just a boatload of micro-step G-codes with the interpreter. But that being said, you're going to have better luck with the 32-bit board than you will the 8-bit board. Now, not to say you need to go to a 32-bit board. If you have an 8-bit board, you can always set up something like Clipper, which takes all of that processing and offloads it to a Raspberry Pi. And that seems, that's a thing that's getting popular. For our Voron build, we will be using Clipper, because that's what's recommended for the processing power. And we're going to try to go through all these fancy kinematic things they've implemented, because simply put, the Raspberry Pi is at least 10 to 15 times faster on a single core than an entire 32-bit board. So Richard there, he's got two, SKR 1.3s?
Yeah, these are SKR 1.3s with 2208 steppers on them. I know some people are going to say that, why aren't you going to the 1.4? Why aren't you going to the 1.4 turbo? Why aren't you using 2209s? Because I'm trying to save myself some money.
Yeah.
That's why.
And this is the worst part about Clipper, guys, is that Clipper doesn't require any processing power. I kid you not. If I wanted to waste my time on the wiring, I could wire up an entire Clipper board for the Voron using an Arduino Uno, like the cheapest board on the market. I could do it because it doesn't require any processing power. And the thing is, like Richard's got an old Ramps 1.4 board there. We could use that with Clipper, and it would actually perform on par with a 32-bit board, because all it's doing is just pulsing commands through. So whereas Richard's going as stock as he can on the Voron build to show you guys their method, I am breaking the rules everywhere I can, and anything that I find successful, I'm going to share with you guys because I want you to save some money. You know, the point of the Voron is to try and reuse as much as you can without impacting the quality of the build. So we talk about buying the extrusion from Misumi, we talk about buying the linear rails from Robot Dig, but past that, the components are kind of at your own, you know, experience level. If you have like the electronics, I already have all my own electronics in-house. I'm going to do my own variation on that. So just keep that in mind. That's why we're encouraging this build, is because it's so compatible with various parts that you may already have. And although a brand new, fresh, you know, we give you all the parts and you go might be like $1,000, if you can do it for $500, why not?
Well, there's also several machines that have been upgraded from their original state to what they call the Voron switch wire. And if you're not familiar with the switch wire, it is one that has come out that is sort of a cross between a regular bed slinger normal Cartesian machine. It looks like a Cartesian, but it operates like a Core XZ, not a Core XY, a Core XZ, because the X and the Z are all riding together. So, something to keep in mind.
Yeah, the stanza real quick. I was just pulling this up here so we can take a look at this here. So this is why you guys want to, you know, keep an eye on the project here.
Yes.
So if you take a look here, we indeed are currently working on the Voron 2.4 original, which we scroll down was the May 13th, 2020. But 5 days ago, they've released some updates. And this is what I want you guys to understand is when you go to a GitHub and go to the releases section, it's always a good idea just to kind of read through it. So the thing that's really nice about it here is they've tracked every single bug fix here. So if we take a look and see, updated Dragon and E3D print heads. Now this one's going to be very important for me because I do have a Dragon hot end that will be going on this one.
Yep.
So thank you for that information. But version 2.4 CAD release and fixes, the CAD work probably won't impact most of us.
Yep.
That's mostly for if you're engineer running an engineering firm and you need to spec out specific parts there. Make DXF sizes relative to frame size instead of relative to spec size. That probably, again, will not impact you. That's more if you're going to someone to laser cut out or CNC cut out your bases.
Yeah.
Manual updates, documentation. So again, we'll print the documentation updates, but that shouldn't impact us. Notepad++ syntax highlighting files doesn't impact us. Z end stop fixes. This might be one worthwhile to read into. So if you ever click on these, it will take you to the item here that just says changed one item. It looks like they changed the nozzle probe STL file here. And there's some comments. This print orientation, I read it as a Printalorian or something. This print orientation feels wrong to me. So, but these are old commits that have been in there for a while, right? Add Prusa slicer profiles. So you can download that. Now I have a Prusa slicer profile. We'll take a look at that. Strengthen the Z stepper mounts. So that might be a good one to print new STL files for that. Fixed mirrored logo on Voron design test cube. Okay, cool. So Richard, actually, is the Voron logo mirrored on yours?
No.
No? Okay, so I'm not sure about that one, but either way, back panel DXF updates, improved M3 holes in the skirts for a better T-nut, fixed mirrored ramps bracket. So there's a couple of STL fixes, but it's not very major, guys. I mean, these are maybe 2 or 3 parts might need to be reprinted here. The end stop pod, a couple of clearance fixes. And this is why we wanted to 3D print our parts and why we wanted to have another printer on standby ready to go. Because apart from the frame, which is basically once it's in place, you don't want to touch it, a lot of these parts you can pop off and upgrade. And if any of you in the audience have actually done this change here, oops, sorry, I gotta hit all my different window buttons here. If any of you have gone and done, you know, a Voron build before, you probably have done this upgrade. And when you go onto the Voron website, actually, you know, I am going to bring this up for you here. When you go and build your Voron design here, and you go to Configurator, you follow through the path, direct feed, and then the first thing it asks says, are you upgrading? New build, or I already have a Voron 2.1 or 2.2 already. Only give me the new parts I need to source. So when you go through and do that whole build, it's going to reduce your sourcing. And you can see via previous release, the previous one to that was 2.2. So they do give you an upgrade path every time they do a major rev. And this one, given that it is a revision 1, I would call that a very minor revision. Yeah. And I wouldn't call that a must-have revision. Like, you have to go and upgrade or you're going to have problems.
Now,
so, yeah.
Just so that we're all on the same page, I printed the STLs that came in the package that I downloaded from the GitHub. Okay, so everything that is in there is pretty much up to snuff.
At the time you did yours, it would have been 2.4.
Yeah.
And guys, we're only talking 5 days ago. These are just quality of life changes. So if you read those release notes, you can figure out if you want to upgrade or not. But you can still continue with 2.4 and it'll work fine.
Every part on this printer right now that I've 3D printed has fit together flawlessly. I haven't had to do anything to it. Everything is just great. I haven't had to change anything. And to be perfectly honest with you, now I have to get my electronics into it so I can test everything. And that's what I was working on the other day was getting Clipper installed onto a Raspberry Pi, which I happen to have right here. And now I have to go ahead and do the boards, and I have to do some wiring. But that being said, I can test them outside the machine. I've got extra stepper drivers, stepper motors, and things like that I can test everything outside of the machine. But until I get to the point where I've got my heated bed, and I've got all the panels that go on so that I can put the electronics in, right now it's going to sit the way that it is. We have another episode coming out in 2 weeks' time, 2 Saturdays from now, and that we're going to show you how to put on all of these Z motors, because there's 4 of them on this build. And that's why you'll see that I've got one board here that has 4 stepper drivers on it. This board is just controlling the stepper drivers for the Z. That's all it's doing. This one, however, is controlling the X, Y, and extruder. Okay. This is also... Go ahead, Brian.
I was just going to say, one side note, one thing that we haven't really talked about much yet, but if you are looking at sourcing your electronics ahead of us actually building it, please get 2 of the same board.
Yeah.
I'm not going to say that 2 different boards will cause you headaches, but just from electronic design experience, you don't want to have 2 sets of boards with different clock rates. It's bad enough that we actually have 2 USB peripheral devices that aren't directly intertwined. In the controls automation field, we normally have a daisy chain system like RS-485, where all of your communications on one channel and you have an interrupt address to identify which one you're talking to, just to maintain timing. But when we start getting into all this asynchronous stuff, it's bad enough already. But if you use, like, let's say an SKR 1.3 and a 1.4 turbo, one of those processors can process commands at about 20% of a faster rate than the other one. And if Clipper doesn't know that, and it's assuming they're processing at the same rates, you're going to start to see deformities. And that's why with this design, they keep all the Zs on one board to keep them synchronized, and then all the X, Y, and extruder on a different one, because it's not as critical on the synchronization of those, but it's still very important. And I just wouldn't recommend mixing and matching. So if you're sitting on an SKR 1.3, try and source another SKR 1.3. You can probably do a 1.4 because the only change was the hardware layout, but not the chip itself. Just make sure you're trying to keep them both in the same chip family. Just from experience, I don't want you guys trying to figure out print artifact issues that were a result of software synchronization.
Okay, there's a couple of one question, and there's one comment here. Let's do the 3D Jeff question, Jerry, before we wrap things up today. I know we're running a little long, but you guys don't care. Oh, okay, well then I'll just read it. Jeff says, trying to set Z offset, no ABL, when I go into the config probe Z offset, can make adjustments shown on the screen, but the steppers don't actually move when I try to adjust.
Yeah, that's correct. Because the probe Z offset, basically, unless you're printing and you have it live adjusting that Z offset, in the firmware, your process is it goes in homes, and then it moves up 5 millimeters. And then once it's done moving up that 5 millimeters, the firmware says, what was your probe Z offset? And then it adjusts it to say, okay, you were at 5 millimeters, but you're actually at, let's say, 7 millimeters, right? So then it drops down 2.
Yeah.
What I usually do, for those of you who don't know my Z probe offset calibration system, it involves you turn off the soft end stop so you can drop below the bed. I home the printer, I let it go up to its 5 mil or whatever, and then I step down the Z until it goes negative, and then I have my piece of paper in there just to check my nozzle offset. Once I've got the happy number, I look at my screen and see where is my number. So let's say if it was saying I was at negative 1.5, I know I need to drop my probe Z offset in the firmware by 1.5.
Yeah.
The key there is to turn off the software end stops. And if you don't have the ability in your firmware and you don't want to recompile the firmware, set your probe Z offset to something like -5 or -6, something disgusting, and then let it home, let it do its thing where it thinks it is, and then drop it down because it's always going to be positive. The firmware is going to stop you from going below 0, but if you say the probe Z offset is, like it's like this long or something silly there, then it's gonna think that it has plenty of room to still go down before it crashes into the bed. So
Correct.
just do that offset, take the number, and then you'll know how much you need to adjust that number by. There is a new Z probe offset wizard in Marlin 2.0.8, but I haven't run it yet, so I don't want to recommend you guys give it a try.
We have one more comment here before we go, and that's from Cave Boards DIY. He says, "Down CNC is working to get you your panels cut." Shameless plug.
I wonder who that is. Yes, Down CNC is our partner for cutting out all our acrylic. They have a 5 foot by 10 foot CNC bed that can cut all sorts of materials. And when we get to that stage, we're going to be providing some video about how that whole process is done there. Down CNC is local here in Okotoks here, so I wouldn't recommend shipping around the world, but hey, if you really want to, there might be an option there. But if you are looking for something locally, CNC cut, whether it's wood, aluminum, alu panel, plastics, everything, Dave's my go-to guy. He's been cutting out all of my parts for all of my machines, and I've been beyond happy. So yeah, if you guys are looking for, just look for Downs CNC on Facebook there, and hopefully I'll get him to actually launch a site one of these days.
3D Jeff wants to know if we have a video coming out based on the that offset. We don't right now, but that doesn't mean to say that we can't do one for you. So we will have a look at that.
Maybe I'll put one together to try that damn YouTube Shorts thing that they keep pushing on.
Or you can put it up on our chat. Or up on our members. Yeah. We'll do something with it. We'll get you a video for it. So with that said, we've gone almost 20 minutes over our time today.
Yeah, I gotta go start setting up my shop.
There you go. I guess I should be there to help you, shouldn't I?
Probably. Well, I mean, that involves actually having a shop first, but no, it's just a lot of planning, guys. As we mentioned, we are opening up a little shop here, and the goal is to part of it is 3D printing services, but the other thing too is we've all been in that bind where we need a part on a weekend, and we have an opportunity to offer you access 7 days a week. Okay, so this is kind
especially
of our
if you're local.
Yeah, absolutely. So we kind of do some shipping options through shopthefirstlayer.com. We never really put a bunch of time into it, but if you guys are interested in us kicking that up into high gear, we can definitely start listing all of our products in there as well. And
I think we are going to do that.
We need to get you guys the stuff when you need it.
Exactly. So with that said, guys, that's the end of our show. Thank you for joining us today. Thank you for all of the super chats. They do really go a long way to helping us finish projects like the Voron and to start new projects.
And thank you for all the great questions. I don't think we even put out our emailer there. If you do have a question, Richard, do you want to bring up the card?
I will do that right now, as a matter of fact. There we are. All right, so if you have questions, don't forget, send them into questions@thefirstlayer.com. That is the best place for us to answer your questions. If you send them to me, if you send them to Brian, if you send them to info, chances are they're not going to get seen. But if you send them to questions@thefirstlayer, they will always get seen. So send your questions to questions@thefirstlayer. We will go through them. And for those that are long questions, like, 6 paragraphs or 2 paragraphs or 3 paragraphs, we usually will answer those off air When we get some time, we will go through them and we answer them off air, send you an email or whatever, and try and help you with your problems. So check out questions@thefirstlayer.com. If you have any questions going into next week, because we need questions. We love questions. I love the email questions. I love the fact that you guys are using the super chat. One of the ways that you can get your question to the top of the queue when we're live is by adding a super chat and asking a question at the same time. That's the best way to do it. So with that said, I want you guys to have a great week. It's going to be sunny here this week, although today it sucks because it's snowing. My brother Raymond says over in Manitoba, it's sunny and warm. Well, you can just keep your sun and your warm. And
you know, a happy Mother's Day to all of those, regardless of who you are, serving as a parental role.
Yep.
Thank you for all your commitments and sacrifices for your kids. You know, it's a great family day. So spend some good time with the family today. Definitely we will with this snow and rain mix, but even if it's lovely, you know, give everybody a hug. We're all in this together.
Jerry just said the magic word, pie, so that's where I'm going. I'm going upstairs to have some pie. I'm going to.
It all consists of coffee and Tic Tacs. It's a luxury.
You know. And we will see you guys on Tuesday with a new tip of the week for all of our members, and then we'll see you again on Saturday with the install of the Aster board for the Ender 3. I've got an Ender 3 Pro, so we're going to throw it in there. We'll see how it works. Now, they didn't send me any discs. They didn't send me any firmware, so I have no idea what's on this. I don't even know how it's going to work. It could be a complete disaster. So awesome. Watch for that coming up on Saturday, and for our members, you can check your video out on Friday. We usually put them up on Friday for you and then switch them over. So until then, remember that the first layer is always your foundation to a great print. And Brian and I are wearing the same hat today. Look at that. You can't
I love these
buy
hats,
these
but I'm
hats,
sorry, they
by
cost
the way.
too much to make, guys, so I won't be able to make any for you unless you want to pay $50 a hat.
Yeah. So this was a gift from Brian for me, and I really love it. So until we see you guys next time, have a great weekend. Enjoy Sunday. Mothers, enjoy your day. Let your men or your kids or your significant other do the work for you today. Okay? Until we see you next time.
Bye for now.
There we go.